An Air National Guardsman's reenlistment sparks outrage with veterans groups. A Fresno State University professor sparks more outrage with her blatant bias and jaw-dropping disregard for basic human decency. And Kanye West made a tweet supporting a conservative, which sparks yet more outrage and abruptly breaks the internet. All that and more on today's completely outrageous episode of War Elephant Pass in Review. My name is John Davis, and this is War Elephants Pass in Review. Okay, so let's start off by talking about this reenlistment ceremony. What you see here is a reenlistment ceremony, which is something that the military does every time that a 4-year contract runs up. For enlisted folks, and this is different from officers like your lieutenants, your majors, your captains, and colonels and generals. But for the enlisted folks, sergeants, privates, corporals, what have you, they have to sign a contract every 4 years or so. That says, I will continue to do the thing that I've been doing for the last 4 years, and then anything else that you sort of tell me to do. All right, so that's a re-enlistment. In it, you have to take the oath of enlistment, which basically says, I do promise to do all the things that are important. Now, it's supposed to be a very dignified affair. It's one of the few times where we actually celebrate the individuality of the troop that's serving. So it's sort of a big deal. However, because it's something that we celebrate in that manner, it's become a military tradition that whatever the actual service member wants to do for the reenlistment ceremony, the commander will go as far out of their way as is reasonable to accommodate their wishes. Now, I'll talk about here in a little bit like what that can mean, but what happened here was that an Air National Guardsman, a master sergeant, did her reenlistment ceremony using a puppet of a dinosaur, and as she said the words, the puppet said them for her, which, well, the long story short is that it got shared to Facebook. The video of it got shared to Facebook, and then outrage throughout the community. After it was shared some 2.5 million times by within the 4th day, the veteran community was outraged. Now, what ended up happening following that was that the general involved, the general over this Air National Guard unit, called down one of his generals below him and said, "You better fix this. You better fix this." So some lieutenant general got upset about everything that the veteran community was saying. He called his major general, I believe, and said, "Fix this." So what that guy did was that he really laid it down. The master sergeant, her career is now over. The colonel who did the swearing in, or excuse me, who conducted the ceremony, who sort of gave the go ahead to it, he was demoted and fired. And even the first sergeant who filmed it is now in hot water. And there's a lot to talk about with this. First off, to all my civilian viewers who are like, why is this such a big deal? Why is this important? I don't understand. Why do people make such a big deal about this? Oh, okay, well, this I'm going to go ahead and give you, because this is one of those weird things that the military does, and nobody understands why they take such a big deal about things that don't really matter. So to talk about that, I'm going to go ahead and show you some other reenlistment ceremonies and show you like how weird it gets, but also a common theme that they all have. Okay, so let's take a look at some of those. Okay, here this is probably one of the coolest ones that I saw. No pun intended. These two did their reenlistment ceremony at the South Pole. Now, I don't know what their jobs were. I don't know what business they had at the South Pole. There's a few military units that are stationed there for various reasons, but these two had to trek to the South Pole to get it. Now I don't know what they had to do to pull that off, but that's phenomenal. This is just one of the most epic things that most people would ever have in their life. And then to have a re-enlistment ceremony there, that's awesome. Okay. All right, this one apparently, I'm guessing an astronaut. I'm guessing an astronaut doing her re-enlistment ceremony in the trainer for for astronaut training. So, what can I say? Epic. Wow. Wow. So I actually saw the backstory on this one. This was an engineering unit, and they piled up a bunch of things that blow up, threw some gasoline on it, and then lit the thing on fire because engineers. As you can see, during the reenlistment ceremony, there is possibly the coolest fireball ever caught on camera. This was done in country. It's like you can't get more wow than that. All right, here what you see. I'm just gonna call it what I think it is. Here I think you see a jerk. Okay, I think this guy's a jerk. It looks like he wanted to have his reenlistment ceremony in the middle of some terrible training that probably unnecessary, ruined everybody's day, and he had a bunch of laughs by doing that. So sincerely, sir, you are a jerk. Okay, you know, scuba divers, there's a lot of different MOSs that involve being underwater. I don't know what this one was, but you know, having your actual reenlistment ceremony underwater probably has something to do with his job, and it's probably something really cool for everybody in his unit. Probably something like, this is probably one of those that everybody at the unit's like cheering. That's just awesome. Okay. Okay, the gas chamber. Like a lot of people actually want to have their ceremony in the gas chamber. Now, if you look at this picture, you see all those beautiful beams of light. You see those beautiful shining beams of light. Well, that's actually not like dust or anything. That's light reflecting off the CS gas. Now it's probably CS gas, but that's light reflecting off the gas. All right. So as soon as they take their masks off, everything's about to get terrible because CS gas is it's very much like the tear gas that you would use for riot control. Okay, it's not going to kill you, but it will ruin your day. It will absolutely ruin your day. It's like one of the worst days that we all have to get every year for our annual training is learning how to deal with the gas chamber. So the type of people who would do this, either like hard chargers or people who actually work with the gas. There's whole training units within larger units that their job is to handle nuclear, biological, chemical instances where, you know, if something goes terribly bad, you need somebody who's an expert on that. But normally they also do the training for everybody else. These guys are probably those biochemical warfare specialists who just wanted to have a reenlistment ceremony in the gas chamber, which is pretty awesome. But also, you're probably a jerk because now everybody's gonna have to clean their stuff and they're gonna be itchy and oozy for the rest of the day. But first off, though, this is how you do it. You see how all their masks are on? Yeah, that's how you do it. This guy, however, decided not to do it. He went in without the gas mask. Okay, like people try this. They try to do it without the gas mask. Now, I'm just going to say the oath of enlistment, it takes a minute. It takes a minute. You don't just, like, the reason that we take our gas mask off, the reason we get our training in there is, one, to learn how to trust the gas mask, trust it to see, oh, wow, this actually works. And part of that is that you have to take it off and then endure like breathing in tear gas. But you have to learn how to do that. Take these short, choppy, you know, like choppy breaths so that you can not pass out and not be overcome with the effects of tear gas. However, that's not exactly the same as saying, I do swear. It's like you're not going to make it. You're not going to die, but your day is going to be ruined by this. So, stupid. All right, and this one, the first sergeant involved with this one actually shared this image talking about how proud he was that they had their reenlistment ceremony on the back of a transport plane, literally in flight, that they later jumped out of. And the first sergeant, it was funny because he was bragging about, of all things, it was like, look at that, positive ripcord control the whole way through, nobody flinched, it was awesome. It's like just like a first sergeant. All right, and this one's where stuff gets interesting. Like here we have a Marine. Here we have a Marine, like a motivator. If you can see closely at his devices, looks like he was in recon. I can't tell from here if he was master sergeant, first sergeant. He's or sergeant, whatever. He's up there. Okay, so this guy did his reenlistment ceremony dressed as a Spartan. Now, all right, just let you know, Marines are crazy about Spartans. It was like when 300 came out, the whole Marine Corps collectively just passed out from the awesomeness of that moment. Okay, we love the Spartans. We love the Spartan ethos, the mythology, the legend, whatever. Just you have this culture, this entire culture built for war, where like everything about them, whether it's true or not, everything that remains about them today is like fanatics about the military profession, and Marines especially want to identify with that mentality. So this guy comes out dressed as a Spartan and does the ceremony that way. Now I'll talk about that in a minute, but and it relates to this last one. Now this is the one I want you to really think about. This guy this guy looks like he's in country, and when I say in country, I mean the Iraq, Afghanistan, a place where bad things are happening, where this is why the military exists. And he took it upon himself to get a stormtrooper outfit sent, and he did his reenlistment dressed as a stormtrooper. Now I'm just gonna tell you, everything up to this point, including this one, everything has had the theme of cool factor. Okay, these were all cool. They were they were all cool, but there's a problem with this one, and maybe even the last one if you really want to get technical. The problem with this one is that this lacks a certain thing that you really need for an enlistment ceremony. In fact, the Air Force, the Air National Guard, called for specifically in their wording. Air Force regulations regarding these events assert that unit commanders will honor all reenlistees through a dignified reenlistment ceremony. Now, I think that's the important thing, is that dignity needs to be maintained. Now I'll say this with the stormtrooper. It's like, dude, that is cool. That's really cool. You know, like that's a fantasy element. That's science fiction. Who's not a fan of Star Wars? But I have to say, this is not dignified. Now, granted, like I said, this is cool, and he's in country, and if you're reenlisting in Iraq, you can get away with anything. But it's not dignified. It's not dignified, and why we care so much about dignity? And I'll pull up the case in point. Why we care so much about dignity as veterans. So because remember, the veteran community are who got outraged about this Master Sergeant's reenlistment. Why they care so much about dignity is that so much of the military is horrible. You know, like living the life is absolutely terrible, and a lot of people don't want to do it because the day-to-day suffering, the day-to-day, you know, crawling through mud is like sometimes the best thing that happened to you that day. So like what we need to still be proud of what we did is the dignity. It's seeing a Marine in dress blues. It's seeing troops marching in those perfect straight files along a parade. Like that dignity and the pride that they get from seeing things that matter, that needs to be preserved so that the veterans themselves can have pride in what they've already done. Now when they see active military people do things that do not have dignity, that make a joke out of service, then I can understand their outrage, because it sort of makes a joke out of all the suffering that you have endured. As a veteran, even those of us who didn't kick indoors, even those of us who didn't lose anybody, you know, there's a lot of stuff that just sucks, and you want to have this sense of dignity surrounding everything you did so that you can still be proud about it. If that dignity is washed away through enough stupid, careless acts, then it takes away from what you did. It really does. And a lot of people will fight for that. A lot of people will fight to say, hey, don't do that. I'm not okay with this. This upsets me, and it shouldn't become a precedent. Now, I'll say that if you want to blow up something in the back of your photo, if you're an engineer and you can somehow tie that to what you do, that's cool. A lot of people are down with that. If you want to do it in the gas chamber, hey, all the power to you. You know, that's really hardcore. That's military. I would say do it right so the pictures don't make you look like an idiot. But you know, that's good. You know, the guy with the Spartan helmet, that one I think gets close as far as dignified, but then it does it does echo this mentality, this warrior ethos that a lot of military veterans are like, yeah, and it's motivating and it makes us feel good about being warriors, but we got to talk about this. We got to talk about this sock puppet, bringing out a dinosaur puppet. It's like there's no dignity in this. It is making a joke of an incredibly important oath. It's making a joke out of an incredibly important moment for millions of veterans, past and present. And well, I'll say this: I don't think that her career should have been over. I definitely don't think the colonel should have been fired. Like even I don't know about demoted. I don't think the first sergeant really did anything wrong by filming it. I do think it was an epic. Like, I do think that all parties involved screwed up, and that there was a huge lack of judgment in anybody saying, "Hey, you know what? This is too far." Should careers have been ended for it? No. I think that a few months, enough to hurt, a few months of their pay being taken away and donated to some veteran service, I think that would have been a very good compromise. I don't think the career should have been over. But it is what it is. It is what it is. I do hope that this event does help the veteran community or help the military, the active military community, say, okay, well, there's a line. There's what we can do and what we can't. And I hope it doesn't get rid of the whole tradition of doing crazy things for your reenlistment ceremony. Like I would want more people to go to the South Pole. I would want more people to do it in the gas chamber. I would want more people to be scuba diving or even conducting it during really jerk training. But like you want that. You want that because that's the stuff that builds esprit de corps. That's stuff that builds unit pride. But letting people know that if you do something too stupid, you'll be fired. Your career will be over. Like 30, 40, 50 years of career has ended because of this one decision. And that's going to be really bad for recruiting. If some kid is saying to himself, like maybe I'd think about the military, and they don't really get it yet. They don't get what it's like to be a veteran, but they see that somebody did a thing that was goofy and got fired for it. Like are they really going to join the military for that? Or especially in this one, like you got that corporal who's thinking about re-enlisting for the first time, and then they see that this happens, and maybe he's going to rethink that. Maybe he's going to rethink becoming a retention statistic. All right, a Fresno State professor gloats over Barbara Bush's death. Says she won't be fired. So in Fresno State, there was a professor who on Twitter went off on Barbara Bush, calling her a hideous racist and telling the world that she was happy she was dead, that she looks forward to when all the rest of the Bushes join her, and then later that she was happy. She was happy about all this because George Bush is probably very sad. And it's like it's like I was having a conversation with liberals about how can they frame their proposals so the conservatives will get behind them. And I gave them several pieces of advice on the values of conservatives, but here, when things like this happen, when we see major institutions celebrating the fact that you can be completely indecent with how you treat, this is a basic human issue. This person's being celebrated by the left for free speech. Okay, you're saying it's about free speech, but really you're just celebrating the fact that it was indecent towards people you despise. Let's look at what she really said, okay? Let's think about what she really said. This one comes from Tribunist. The last one was from Daily Wire. And Tribunist took some actual screenshots to show what the woman said. So this Randa Gerard was generous and smart, amazing racist who, along with her husband, raised a war criminal. Okay, classy. Either you're against pieces of like this and they're genocidal raised, or you're part of the problem. Okay, so if you don't agree with me, you're part of the problem. Can't wait for the rest of them to fall can't wait for the rest of the family to fall their demise. Yeah, that's okay. Calling for people's deaths. That's interesting. All the hate I'm getting made me forget how happy I am that George W. Bush is probably really sad right now. So, okay, you really do wish for people to be miserable because their mother died. And it's like, this is indecent. It's reprehensible. It's some of the most disgusting behavior we've seen in 2018. It was like it. And I'm sure you're going to talk about, but what about Trump? No, nothing Trump has done comes close to this level of indecency. Sorry, nothing. A lot of people are arguing that, this is about free speech. Like, she should have free speech. She should be able to say whatever she wants to say, even if it's absolutely detestable. A lot of people on the right have been saying that. And, even Ben Shapiro, who has been a target of a lot of hate speech from both sides, has come out saying, not so much defending her, not defending what she did, but saying, she has a constitutional right to say these things, no matter how reprehensible they are, no matter what the character no matter what it shows about her character, and no matter what it says about all the people who are defending her simply because they love the fact that she said she wants the Bushes to die. I'm not even disagreeing with the fact that she has First Amendment protections. What I'm saying is, what would happen if it went the other way? I want everybody, and I especially want liberals to think about this. I want you to ask, what would happen if it was Michelle Obama? What would happen if it was some professor who said that he or she were so happy that Michelle Obama was dead because everyone in that family was now miserable. They were happy that they were miserable because Obama was such a horrible person, what with his drone campaign or with what he did in Libya or all the other things that he's done that people don't agree with, that a lot of people on the right don't agree with. What would happen if somebody said in a Twitter rant, who had power, somebody who was empowered by a university, in a Twitter rant, that they were happy that Michelle Obama was dead, that Barack Obama was miserable? What would that look like? And honestly, imagine that, because we've seen things like that. We've seen people get fired for saying things. There was a reporter who got fired because he said that the Obama girls didn't look happy enough at a Thanksgiving thing. That was it. He said that they looked mopey, and he was fired for that. Now, getting back into more relevant, we talk about free speech, but why aren't we talking about the Atlantic reporter who was fired for a view that the Atlantic even knew? He was their token conservative. They brought him on as the token conservative for the Atlantic because they were trying marginally to fix the view that many people rightfully had, that they were a biased organization beyond reproach. So they hired one token conservative who, guess what, was against abortion. They knew this. They already knew this about him. But then people started discovering things that they already knew and making it more and more of a public issue, to the point that the Atlantic fired him because of things they already knew about the guy. A mob called him out and said, no, you're not allowed to work here at the Atlantic. You shouldn't be here because your views are so terrible. Well, the Atlantic didn't care about free speech. The Atlantic fired him to take care of the liberal sensibilities. Okay, so what about that? And then what about also this other news about, this one comes from the Alliance Defending Freedom, where this is not even the first case of free speech being called into question at Fresno State. There they talk about a teacher, Greg Thatcher, who doesn't view free speech as something important, that it shouldn't matter as much. Now, there you had students, a pro-life organization, that went out to Fresno State, got permission to protest themselves, were given permission to write pro-life messages and life-affirming messages on the sidewalk. It was a specific sidewalk, and they had written permission for it. However, Greg Thatcher told his students to erase it, and then claimed that because Fresno State is not a free speech area, that they aren't allowed to say it. They're not allowed to say things unless they say it in a very specific point in campus, even though they had written permission for it. So Greg Thatcher doesn't believe in free speech when he himself is a tenured professor at Fresno State. However, when a different professor says things that are patently egregious, she's given full protection on free speech. I guess where I'm frustrated with this isn't that that I think that everybody should be fired for saying things that are offensive. It's not that. It's like where I'm frustrated is with the inconsistency on the matter. Even at Fresno State, you have a group of students who go out of their way to make sure that they do everything right, go through all the proper channels to get permission to use their freedom of speech. You shouldn't have to get permission to use your freedom of speech in the first place, but they did. They received written permission to put their voices out and to be heard in a certain area, and then a professor went out of his way to tell other students to deny these kids their rights. Now that's deplorable. That also happened at Fresno State. But then he followed it up with saying that no, here is not free speech. There is an area for free speech. You can go to that area. We've segregated an area where you can have your rights. Now it's separate, but it's equal. Then we have this where this professor doesn't have a free speech area. She has Twitter. She can go literally anywhere in the world and say absolutely anything, and her free speech is protected. Well, why doesn't it go both ways? Why is it that students' free speech at Fresno State is accosted, but a professor can literally say the most deplorable thing she can possibly think of? It's like you can't protect only the views that you agree with. And the fact that you're protecting them, that says a lot. That says a lot. Now then we have to talk about within all of education and the fact that conservatives do face repression and that they don't get to exercise their free speech even at the tenured professor level. We've seen that if that's an issue, we also have the problem that conservative professors don't get tenured. Now, I've written about this before, and I'll put a link down at the bottom, but there is a major issue that conservatives are being pushed out. Conservatives are being pushed out of upper education. In fact, in many surveys, it's shown that it's easier to find a registered Marxist than it is to find a Republican at many college institutions. Now, that should be something that terrifies us, given that half of the nation does not have representation at institutions of higher learning. And to say that this is a free speech area, that the institution of higher education celebrates free speech, well, you really don't get to say that you celebrate free speech when you only celebrate the free speech of the most hateful people who you kind of agree with. And something else I don't really get about all this with the talk about celebrating free speech and protecting her rights to have free speech, where were all these professors and all these school boards and all the presidents of the universities whenever conservative speakers weren't allowed to come onto campus? Where were they when thousands of conservative professors felt like they couldn't actually come out of the closet as a conservative because they would not get tenure? Or even tenured professors who did lose their jobs. Like where was all this? It's like colleges have been completely shown to be anti-free speech for the better part of a decade now. But now all of a sudden they're willing to say, well, we celebrate free speech because this person says that Mrs. Bush, Barbara Bush, was a witch and that she's glad she's dead, and that George Bush, the war criminal she raised, she's happy that he's in mourning because he's sad. She's happy about that. No, now you grow your free speech bone. It's like, why is it that you were censoring people who were being insensitive, who were not being politically correct when they said things like, much of the problem that we're having dealing with black suffering in their neighborhoods is not because whites are racist. It's because there's issues going on and policies being made that are causing bad things to happen in the black communities, which are a natural consequence of bad policies. That was called racist, and that was said that you couldn't say that on college campuses because it would offend people. And college campuses were fine with censoring that. That was called racist behavior. Everything else dealing with conservatives were called racist on campus. They were banned because they were racist, they were sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic. Everything. Even a feminist of decades, a decades-long feminist, Christina Hoff Sommers, was banned from college campuses because she was sexist against women. No, college campuses don't get to say now. Now they're celebrating free speech. Now they're protecting free speech, when for so many years they've been doing exactly the opposite. Okay, you don't get to grow your backbone on free speech only when somebody says something absolutely disgusting. Something that if you really cared about hate speech, you would be saying something about this. You don't get to grow your backbone today. No, it's not free speech if it's only free speech for people you agree with. And yes, you agree with her. You agree with her every single word of it. You can't come out and say, this does not reflect the values of this university, and then protect her. Okay? When you do things that show you will only protect free speech of people who are hateful, but their hate aligns with your values, you're not protecting free speech. In fact, you're the opposite. Tenure, the concept of tenure is to provide professors a sense of freedom so that they can say things that are politically incorrect, that are pushing the envelope, or that push science and reason and whatever fields they work in to a further degree so that they don't face negative repercussions from those communities, things that'll stifle the progression of our understanding of the world. Now, while we're on the subject, what does this professor have tenure for? Now, what she has tenure for is as an English professor. Now, here she is talking about politics, which I'm not saying that just because she's a English professor, she's not allowed to talk about politics, but she received tenure for her work in English. Now, this is what she said. This is what Fresno State considers the work of a tenured English professor. Now, she's definitely not progressing politics in any sort of direction that's healthy, but to say that this is the work of a tenured professor in English really says a lot about Fresno State. If a child in my wife's 5th grade class turned in something written like this, that child would fail. But it's okay because she's a tenured English professor. I'm just saying, this is what you need to think about represents you, Fresno State. Part of the things that Fresno State's going to have to endure is that by making this stance and saying, we're going to protect these people under these specific situations and then call that some sort of celebration of free speech, is that many of their donors, many of their alumni, many of the people who have supported Fresno State for years are done. Okay, it's shown that the institution is promoting people to the rank of tenured professor who have no business being tenured. It's showing that they're doing this not because these people are brilliant thinkers in their fields, but because of some ideological background that the university has shifted towards. And because the university no longer cares about putting out the highest in academic standards and putting out the best quality students it can, but just furthering some ideology, then a lot of the alumni are saying, no, this institution no longer represents my values. It no longer represents something I'm proud of, and I'm not going to fund it anymore. So Fresno State is dealing with that right now, that many of their alumni are reporting into the president that do something about this or we're done. Now, this is going to have dramatic consequences later on into Fresno's future. And what's probably going to happen as well, the same thing has happened to other universities that have taken very, very clear leftist stances on numerous issues, which also does still include suppression of conservative views, is that students also make the final decision. If a student feels that they're going to a toxic environment where their views will be repressed, where they'll only be allowed to have certain views, even liberal students don't want to be a part of that. Okay, and this saying, like, there's nothing good in the advertising for Fresno State that came from this professor. Okay, she's not saying that this is a place of tolerance. She's saying that this is a toxic place where if you don't agree exactly with what I agree with, you will suffer for it. And a lot of students will make the final decision that I refuse to go to a university like this. We saw this with other universities to where they saw massive reductions in enrollment the semester after this huge leftist protest went down. It's happened again and again repeatedly. And I'm pretty sure that it'll be something that we should watch for Fresno State. We should watch how many kids actually want to go there starting next year. We should watch the freshman enrollments starting around in August. That's something we should be watching for, because people are going to need to understand that if you really, really want to support this behavior, but you won't call out the times where professors silence students doing everything right, then a lot of kids aren't going to want to go there. And just as importantly, the people who actually keep the lights on, the people who cause new programs to happen, the donors, the alumni, they're going to abandon you too. So as for Fresno State, I felt that this was a horrific situation put on them by a professor that they made tenure. And so they're going to suffer all the consequences. It won't be now. Randa Gerard is correct. She won't be fired. However, she burned the university. And it's going to be suffering the consequences of her for many years to come. So in celebrity news, Kanye West supported a conservative and broke the internet. Let's go ahead and look at where that goes.
Superstar Kanye West setting off a social media firestorm after he praised conservative activist Candace Owens. In a tweet, West told his followers that he, quote, loves the way Candace Owens thinks.
Well, just hours before.
Okay, so those of you who don't know Candace Owens, she's a YouTuber, an activist who previously went by the name of Red Pill Black. Red Pill Black, referring to the fact that she used to be a Democrat, and for a lot of conservatives, the term red pill is that moment when you thought liberal your entire life, you thought Democratic your entire life, but then you start seeing a lot of the inconsistencies match up to the point that you're like, everything that I used to believe is wrong. Okay, there's that big red pill moment. So she goes by the term Red Pill Black, in that she used to be a Democrat who believed that the Democratic Party were the party for blacks, and now she has a very different mentality. She has a very different mentality on everything, believing now that liberal mentalities have actually been harmful for blacks for many years. She's not the only one, by the way. There's a number of very good books on the subject by Thomas Sewell, who's also a black academic who's been studying and writing in conservative politics for many, many years. He actually was even farther to the left than a Democrat. He was a registered Marxist before becoming a conservative, in a story very, very similar to Candace Owens herself. But anyway, Owens now attracts a lot of hate and a lot of ire from the black community, because let's just look at what she says.
That Candace took on Black Lives Matter protesters at an event at UCLA. Watch this.
What is happening right now in the black community, you're going to hear it in this room first. There's an ideological civil war happening. Black people that are focused on their past and shouting about slavery, and black people that are focused on their futures, okay? I can guarantee you what you're seeing happening is victim mentality versus victor mentality.
Now, whether you agree with her or not, Kanye really did. Kanye really appreciates the things that she says, and so he tweeted out a long series of tweets supporting Candace and her views, believing mostly that free thought in the black community is repressed, and that only those who follow a certain narrative are allowed to have opinions. So, I mean, this sort of returns to the last thing we were talking about. That said, conservative writer Ben Shapiro says that conservatives shouldn't be making too big a deal over this. Kanye said many things in that series of tweets that conservatives would be really happy with. Constantly bring up the past keeps you stuck there. We have freedom of speech, but not freedom of thought. And once again, celebrating Candace Owens. But what Shapiro brings up is that conservatives are so starved for somebody of influence, some popular celebrity, to feel free enough to actually say that they support some level of conservative thought, that they'll do it. You know, like we've seen in Hollywood that so many people in the entertainment industry will lose their careers if they come out as conservative. You know, it's happened to numerous people, and there's very few who can get away with having any sort of conservative outlook on life. But people in America, whether they're conservative or liberal, whether they're Republican, Democrat, no matter what ideology they have, if they see a celebrity have that, man, will they celebrate it. Man, they will just love it. If you saw my past review on Easter, Chris Pratt, you know Chris Pratt? And so I get that. I understand that mentality. But with conservatives, we see so few celebrities come out in support of their ideals. This halo develops around them to where nothing they do can ever be wrong. And that's like that shouldn't be the way that we act. You know, like Kanye West has never ever shown consistent understanding of conservative ideas. He's so disattached from normal reality that he can't really understand nor communicate our ideas. Now, obviously, he can speak on issues dealing with blacks in America, and he seems to agree very much with what Candace Owens believes. Now, that's great, and I'm glad that he's supporting Candace Owens, because Candace is really a brilliant mind, and I would wonder if she were given the time to work like that other people like Thomas Sowell have had, if she will have as much of an impact on conservatism as he has. Now, mind you, not everything that Sowell writes on is about black issues. He is a legitimate thought leader in conservatism, and I think that Owens could be too. But with Kanye is never going to be a thought leader in conservatism. He doesn't identify with the ideology. He identifies with the parts that Candace speaks on, and that's, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of conservatives want to treat him as if he's a thought leader because he is an influential person. He's influential, but we need to remember a lot of things that he's said and done no conservative would be okay with. Let's just have fun and remember Yeezus. Do you remember Yeezus, where he compared himself to a particularly important person to most conservatives, literally casting himself as the Christ? Wow. Just wow. Oh yes, and this one, the apotheosis of Kanye. Yes, when Kanye literally became God. So you know, I'm sorry, but like a lot of people who treat Kanye as this figure that is now he's now red pilled. He now understands what it's like to be conservative. He's speaking for conservatives. Like, no, there's a few issues that he agrees very much with on one very good conservative writer, and I'm glad that she's getting more promotion from this. But we shouldn't treat celebrities who say a few things that we like as if they are thought leaders of our ideology. We need to get better at understanding our own ideology so that we can communicate it. And I see this happening a lot more with the populists on our side. A lot of the populists are people who, you know, they voted for Trump because there's legitimate suffering happening in a lot of parts of America that never get any attention. You know, dealing with the suffering of blacks, that was an issue that liberals really wanted to call attention to. And they made a big deal about saying that whites were a privileged group. However, when you look at census data, you'll see that there were 3 times as many poor whites as there were poor blacks. But most of them happened in rural parts of the country. So no one ever paid attention to them. All the news abandoned the rural areas. So you never saw the plight of the working poor, which outnumbered poor blacks by a margin of 3-1. And that showed that there was not an issue of racism as much as there was an issue of really bad governance, and that we were not doing what we needed to for our citizens. That's blacks and whites. That was everybody. Okay, but there was a lot of messaging that got screwed up there. Okay, populists really rose up on the right to say, no, we're poor, we're suffering, the economy isn't working for us. Everything that people are saying should be working isn't, and we need help. We need somebody to speak for us. And somehow Donald Trump got to be that guy. Now, maybe this has a lot to do with having that conversation about celebrities speaking for you. Okay, Donald Trump did a very good job of listening. He actually listened to a lot of those people that no one in the media were paying attention to. And, well, look how that turned out for him. Now, but would we really want to look to a future with maybe Kanye West running for president in 2024? But I mean, this is the deal that a lot of people have, is that if a celebrity says something that you like, then you attribute this halo effect that everything they say is good. And populists are very vulnerable to that. Okay, that's why I'm extraordinarily happy that the election went the way it did, because a lot of people that are out here that are very close to my heart finally had somebody listening to them when they aren't very political people, and that's fine. But at some point, you need to get at least political enough to understand your values enough to fact check. It's like, hey, you're not, like, I do agree with some of the things you said, but you're not really representing me. And where this comes into question in a much bigger way, actually happened very recently with, like, the Roseanne show. Now, ever since the Roseanne show came back, it's been blowing up the ratings. Now, and part of that had to do with the fact that before we even saw the first episode, Roseanne came out hard against Jimmy Kimmel, talking about how he was actually actively doing something to destroy the country, and that, you know, she said the words. It was like, you know, whether you like whether you like Trump or not, nobody wants the nation to suffer. And he was like, no, I didn't. And she said, well, then shut up. Shut up, with more colorful language. It's like, it called him, it put him in place. It really put him in his place in front of a lot of people. So people got excited about this Trump supporting hardcore working class woman, you know, getting some airwaves. But, you know, there's problems with that too. You know, the show really goes out of their way to really hammer on Hillary, which you know, now you're allowed to. Ever since Brazil came out with her book saying that Hillary did all these terrible things and that she really bullied her way into power and didn't deserve anything, that totally destroyed Hillary's credibility, even within the Democratic Party, and they've been trying to distance themselves to it ever since. Now because of that, now everybody's allowed to, in media, say bad things about Clinton. But Roseanne on the show is no different. It also celebrates certain aspects of Trump supporter that the show sort of wants people to talk about, and it wants people to talk about. But Ben Shapiro, in a piece a few weeks ago, so back in March, he was talking about this element that Roseanne was trying to cast Trump supporters as this thing that really they're not. And let's look at what he says later on in the article. Okay, and what Shapiro says in his piece about Roseanne is that there's something else going on in Roseanne that should disturb conservatives. The redefinition of Trump supporters as blue-collar leftists rather than conservatives. Roseanne's character is pro-gay marriage, pro-abortion, feminist, and pro-transgender. And the implication is that she is a good person because of those views. The real difference between Trump voters and Hillary voters are economic in nature, not cultural. Now, that's really important. That's really important because what he does is he makes the very good case that by all those definitions, there should be no difference between Roseanne's character or just Trump, the Trump supporters that are being displayed on the show. There's no difference between them and your run-of-the-mill Bernie supporter. Now, that's an issue in itself because, like, Roseanne doesn't actually represent virtually any Trump supporters I know, but she's being made to look that way so that Trump supporters can feel like there's somebody representing them. Now, this is an interesting way to transform a culture into something that you like. And Shapiro actually talks about that too. This was the original concept of the Roseanne character. I interviewed Marcy Carsey. Really? That's her name? Marcy Carsey? Anyway, I interviewed Marcy Carsey, the woman behind the original Roseanne, for my book Primetime Propaganda. Carsey called herself a Democrat who grew up in an Eisenhower Republican house and said that she understood Republicans, but that the show was written about working class women, a working class heroine to represent the difficult lives that so many millions of women were leading. Roseanne featured one of television's earliest same-sex weddings, the title character considering abortion, the title character asking her virgin daughter to use birth control, her daughter Darlene using pot, speed, and acid, and the title character routinely and vulgarly describing genitalia. Okay, so from its earlier rendition, from the show's earlier run, we could see that it had propagandistic elements meant to show working class people and pull them further to the left. So the early Roseanne was not ever showing a respectful depiction of Republican values or of conservative values. You won't see anywhere in media back then or even now to where a conservative is viewed in any sort of positive light. The last time we saw this was a show that many people, myself included, really enjoyed. That was Last Man Standing. Like, we saw Last Man Standing, and it was completely eviscerated for no reason. In spite of being one of the most popular shows on television, it got pulled, and no one ever found out why. It was pretty clear. It was pretty clear why, that its views were just not acceptable to the networks that put it out, in spite of the fact that it showed a clear demand. That was the last time any of us saw a respectful depiction of conservative values. And even then, Tim Allen admitted that his writers were even liberal. So even with that, we saw the whole show through the lens of liberal values. With one of the main characters, his whole purpose was there to challenge Allen and to give some sort of argument. Whereas if you were to see the conservative counterpart to Last Man Standing son-in-law, to see a person like that in most liberal shows, you'd never see it. You'd never see a person whose purpose is to challenge the views of the main character, especially if they're a liberal character. But we lost Last Man Standing. It's gone now for no good reason. But we do have Roseanne. Roseanne is now this character who's showing that a person is good in spite of voting for Trump if they still have many leftist views, especially culturally. Okay, and the thing that makes a Trump voter has nothing to do with their culture. It has only to do with their economics, their economic situation. Okay, that's what defines a Trump supporter, and that's not good, because a lot of people are going to be watching this and thinking, oh, this person represents me, when she really doesn't. It's trying to push the population more to the left, trying to redefine what it means to be a Trump supporter, to be a conservative, into something more like this character that Roseanne represents, and it's not conservative. Now, going back to Kanye, he's a guy that says many things that conservatives can agree with. That's good. That's good. There's not a lot of celebrities that do, but he himself has never given off the impression that he is well-founded in conservative thought and conservative theory. At best, he aligns with one issue that we have, and conservatives, like with Roseanne, like with other celebrities, shouldn't be making all these celebrities, whenever they finally say one thing, into this halo effect character that this represents us. Now, I know the obvious implication is Donald Trump, but let's look at that. Donald Trump got to be where he is today because he said many of the things that we all agreed with. But let's face facts. Donald Trump hasn't really had a very strong history of following conservative views. Now, the thing is, as president, he's doing a lot of things that conservatives are happy with. A few things we're not. And I'm not even talking about his behavior outside of being president. Okay, but he got into office because he had something that all the other Republican candidates who were strong conservative candidates didn't. And that's that he didn't need the media. He had his own following, which could push out whatever message he wanted. Now, because the media has had this very liberal bias for many years, they've filtered out conservatives who push the envelope too far culturally. Okay, they're allowed to speak on economic issues. They're allowed to give their economic views. But if you push the envelope too far as a cultural conservative, you're not going to get any representation out there by the media. Well, Donald Trump didn't need the media. He had his own. So when he listened to the people, when he listened to actual people speaking about their culture and speaking about their needs and speaking about things that the media wasn't covering, well, it worked. Okay, it didn't work because he was a good conservative. It worked because he had control of his own voice. Now, other celebrities like Kanye, same story. And so I'm actually a little terrified that if conservatives or Trump supporting populists or many of the people out there who don't thoroughly hold people account to the values that underlie conservatism don't check these celebrities who say things they like, then we're going to see Kanye West running for president in 2024. Okay, so that's something that we need to do. We need to stop looking at celebrities that say a few things that we like and then call them people who are thought leaders in our movement. Okay, Donald Trump is not a thought leader in conservatism. He's doing a lot of things that we like right now, but if you think that Donald Trump has issues representing conservatives, wait till Kanye. And if that doesn't scare you, wait till Rosanne. Okay, so some positive news. Everything in the news is bad. We've just accepted that. Everything in the news is always bad. All right, politicians are bad. Celebrities are bad. Leftist professors are terrible. But we have some positive news coming out of Louisiana, and this one comes to us actually in the wake of one family's personal tragedy. A recent Facebook post went viral when during a funeral procession, the two cousins of the deceased stopped to notice that as they drove past a middle school in Louisiana, the Franklinton Junior High School, that all the boys just involved in a pickup game suddenly stopped and dropped to one knee. The person who made the post said that they didn't drop to their knee in disrespect, but in honor. And to see this, like the boys also said that there were no adults around to tell them that this is how you should act. There was no one around to say, hey, do this. They just saw this family in hurting. They saw this funeral procession, and they did a genuine act of respect and decency. Just out of the goodness of what makes them who they are, they dropped to one knee to show this family, we honor your loss. We give our condolences in the only way we know how. This was just a regular pickup game. There was nothing going on. Now, one thing that was very important is that one of the boys reached out on the Facebook post that went viral with at this point about 1,500 shares and thousands of responses. But one of the boys reached out and said that they did it because their coach actually did the service that respectable men in these authority positions over boys should have, in the teaching them character, teaching them that there's certain things that you should do to show respect to people. I wanted to share this one because it's a real testament to the decency of your average American. People who would never see each other in a regular day-to-day, people who don't know each other, they can be brought to tears by seeing this wonderful trait of just being a fellow American and understanding that we do deserve some measure of dignity, and that people will go out of their way. They'll stop what they're doing to show that dignity to others. And that's something that needs to be celebrated. It's something that I wanted to share with all of you guys because it really made me happy to see that there's still wonderful people out there, and that they're not that rare. We never celebrate stories like this. We never talk about these caring and dignified acts of respect because it's just not news leading. Okay, but it's something we should all be very proud of. It's something we should all be very happy for, and it's something that we should try to see emulated in others so that maybe the news isn't always so bad. Having said that, I just want to say to the boys at Franklinton Junior High School, all you guys who just had a nice, decent game of basketball, I really hope that you're proud of yourselves because you've really shown a lot of people something to be proud of about humanity and that you did the right thing when you were called to, and that's something that no one could ask anything more of any man. So, good job. All right, thank you very much for joining me on another episode of War Elephants Pass in Review. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more. If you'd like to help me make more videos like this, please donate to my Patreon by clicking the link below. Semper Fi and God bless. War Elephant out.
Look at me now.